Sati said, "Thus have I recited to you the whole story of how Amrita was churned out of the ocean, and the occasion on which the horse Kurukṣetra of great beauty and incomparable prowess was obtained." It was this horse about which Kadru asked Vinata, saying, "Tell me, amiable sister, without taking much time, of what color Kurukṣetra is." And Vinata answered, "That prince of steeds is certainly white." "What dost thou think, sister? Say thou, what is its color? Let us lay a wager upon it." Kadru replied, "Then, oh, thou sweet smiles! I think that horse is black in its tail." "Beauteous one, bet with me that she who looseth will become the other's slave." Sati continued, thus wagering with each other about menial service as a slave, the sisters went home, and resolved to satisfy themselves by examining the horse next day. And Kadru, bent upon practicing a deception, ordered her 1,000 sons to transform themselves into black hair and speedily cover the horse's tail in order that she might not become a slave. But her sons, the snakes, refusing to do her bidding, she cursed them, saying, "During the snake sacrifice of the wise king Janamejaya of the Pāṇḍava race, Agni shall consume you all." And the grandsire, Brahman, himself heard this exceedingly cruel curse pronounced by Kadru, impelled by the fates. And seeing that the snakes had multiplied exceedingly, the grandsire, moved by kind consideration for his creatures, sanctioned with all the gods this curse of Kadru. Indeed, as the snakes were of virulent poison, great prowess and excessive strength, and ever bent on biting other creatures, their mother's conduct towards them, those persecutors of all creatures, was very proper for the good of all creatures. Fate always inflicts punishment of death on those who seek the death of other creatures. The gods, having exchanged such sentiments with one another, supported Kadru's action, and went away. And Brahman, calling Kasyapa to him, spake unto him these words, "O, thou pure one who overcomest all enemies, these snakes begotten by you, who are of virulent poison and huge bodies, and ever intent on biting other creatures, have been cursed by their mother. O son, do not grieve for it in the least. The destruction of the snakes in the sacrifice hath, indeed, been ordained long ago." Saying this, the divine creator of the universe comforted Kasyapa and imparted to that illustrious one the knowledge of neutralizing poison. And so ends the 20th section in the Astika Parva of the Adi Parva. The Mahābhārata. Adi Parva. Section 21. Astika Parva continued. Sati said, "Then when the night had passed away and the sun had risen in the morning, O thou whose wealth is asceticism, the two sisters Kadru and Vinata, having laid a wager about slavery, went with haste and impatience to view the steed Kurukṣetra from a near point. On their way they saw the ocean, that receptacle of waters, vast and deep, rolling and tremendously roaring, full of fishes large enough to swallow the whale, and abounding with huge mackerels and creatures of various forms by thousands, and rendered inaccessible by the presence of other terrible, monster-shaped, dark, and fierce aquatic animals, abounding with tortoises and crocodiles, the mine of all kinds of gems, the home of Varuna, the water god, the excellent and beautiful residence of the Nagas, the lord of all rivers, the abode of the subterranean fire, the friend, or asylum, of the Asuras, the terror of all creatures, the grand reservoir of water, and ever immutable. It is holy, beneficial to the gods, and is the great source of nectar, without limits, inconceivable, sacred, and highly wonderful. It is dark, terrible with the sound of aquatic creatures, tremendously roaring, and full of deep whirlpools. It is an object of terror to all creatures. Moved by the winds blowing from its shores and heaving high, agitated and disturbed, it seems to dance everywhere with uplifted hands represented by its surges. Full of swelling billows caused by the waxing and waning of the moon, the parent of Vasudevā's great conch called Panchajanya, the great mine of gems. Its waters were formerly disturbed in consequence of the agitation caused within them by the Lord Govinda of immeasurable prowess when he had assumed the form of a wild boar for raising their submerged earth. Its bottom, lower than the nether regions, the vow-observing regenerate Ṛṣyasringa could not fathom after toiling for 100 years. It becomes the bed of the lotus-naveled Vishnu when at the termination of every yuga that deity of immeasurable power enjoys yoga nidra, the deep sleep under the spell of spiritual meditation. It is the refuge of Menaka fearful of falling thunder, and the retreat of the Asuras overcome in fierce encounters. It offers water as sacrificial butter to the blazing fire issuing from the mouth of Vairava, the ocean mare. It is fathomless and without limits, vast and immeasurable, and the lord of rivers. And they saw that unto it rushed mighty rivers by thousands with proud gait, like amorous competitors, each eager for meeting it, forestalling the others. And they saw that it was always full, and always dancing in its waves. And they saw that it was deep and abounding with fierce whales and macaras. And it resounded constantly with the terrible sounds of aquatic creatures. And they saw that it was vast, and wide as the expanse of space, unfathomable, and limitless, and the grand reservoir of water. And so ends the 21st section in the Astika Parva of the Adi Parva. The Mahābhārata. Adi Parva. Section 22. Astika Parva continued. Sati said, the Nagas after consultation arrived at the conclusion that they should do their mother's bidding, for if she failed in obtaining her desire she might withdraw her affection and burn them all. If, on the other hand, she were graciously inclined, she might free them from her curse. They said, we will certainly render the horse's tail black. And it is said that they then went and became hairs in the horse's tail. Now the two co-wives had laid the wager. And having laid the wager, O best of Brahmanas, the two sisters Kadru and Vinata, the daughters of Dakshur, proceeded in great delight along the sky to see the other side of the ocean. And on their way they saw the ocean, that receptacle of waters, incapable of being easily disturbed, mightily agitated all of a sudden by the wind, and roaring tremendously, abounding with fishes capable of swallowing the whale and full of macaras, containing also creatures of diverse forms counted by thousands, frightful from the presence of horrible monsters, inaccessible, deep, and terrible, the mine of all kinds of gems, the home of Varuna, the water god, the wonderful habitations of the Nagas, the lord of rivers, the abode of the subterranean fire, the residence of the Asuras and of many dreadful creatures, the reservoir of water, not subject to decay, aromatic, and wonderful, the great source of the Amrita of the celestials, immeasurable and inconceivable, containing waters that are holy, filled to the brim by many thousands of great rivers, dancing as it were in waves. Such was the ocean, full of rolling waves, vast as the expanse of the sky, deep, of body lighted with the flames of subterranean fire, and roaring, which the sisters quickly passed over. And so ends the 22nd section in the Astika Parva of the Adi Parva. The Mahābhārata. Adi Parva. Section 23. Astika Parva continued. Sati said, having crossed the ocean, Kadru of swift speed, accompanied by Vinata, soon alighted near the horse. They then both beheld that foremost of steeds of great speed, with body white as the rays of the moon but having black hairs in the tail. And observing many black hairs in the tail, Kadru put Vinata, who was deeply dejected, into slavery. And thus Vinata, having lost the wager, entered into a state of slavery and became exceedingly sorry. In the meantime, when his time came, burst forth from the egg without the help of his mother, Garuda of great splendor, enkindling all the points of the universe, that mighty being endued with strength, that bird capable of assuming at will any form, of going at will everywhere, and of calling to his aid at will any measure of energy. Effulgent like a heap of fire, he shone terribly. Of lustre equal to that of the fire at the end of the yuga, his eyes were bright like the lightning flash. And soon after birth, that bird grew in size and increasing his body ascended the skies. Fierce and vehemently roaring, he looked as terrible as second ocean fire. And all the deities seeing him, sought the protection of Bhavasu, Agni. And they bowed down to the deity of manifold forms seated on his seat and spake unto him these words, O Agni, extend not thy body. Wilt thou consume us? Lo, this huge heap of thy flames is spreading wide. And Agni replied, O, ye persecutors of the Asuras, it is not as ye imagine. This is Garuda of great strength and equal to me in splendor, endued with great energy, and born to promote the joy of Vinata. Even the sight of this heap of effulgence hath caused this delusion in you. He is the mighty son of Kasyapa, the destroyer of the Nagas, engaged in the well-being of the gods, and the foe of the Daityas and the Rakshasas. Be not afraid of it in the least. Come with me and see. Thus addressed the gods from a distance. The gods said, Thou art a rishi, i.e., one cognizant of all mantras, share of the largest portion in sacrifices, ever resplendent. The controller along with the rishi wended their way towards Garuda and adored him of birds, the presiding spirit of the animate and the inanimate universe. Thou art the destroyer of all, the creator of all. Thou art the very Hiranyagarbha, thou art the progenitor of creation in the form of Daksha and the other Prajapatis, thou art Indra, the king of the gods, thou art Hayagriva, the steed-necked incarnation of Vishnu. Thou art the arrow, Vishnu himself, as he became such in the hands of Mahadeva at the burning of Tripura. Thou art the Lord of the universe. Thou art the mouth of Vishnu, thou art the four-faced Padma, thou art the Brahmana, i.e., wise, thou art Agni, Pavana, etc. i.e., the presiding deity of every object in the universe. Thou art knowledge, thou art the illusion to which we are all subject, thou art the all-pervading spirit, thou art the Lord of the gods, thou art the great truth, thou art fearless, thou art ever unchanged, thou art Brahma without attributes, thou art the energy of the sun, thou art the intellectual functions, thou art our great protector, thou art the ocean of holiness, thou art purity, thou art bereft of the attributes of darkness, thou art the possessor of the 6 high attributes, thou art he who cannot be withstood in contest. From thee have emanated all things. Thou art of excellent deeds, thou art all that hath not been and all that hath been. Thou art pure knowledge, thou displayest to us, as Surya does by his rays, this animate and inanimate universe, thou darkenest the splendor of Surya at every moment, and thou art the destroyer of all. Thou art all that is perishable and all that is imperishable. O, thou resplendent as Agni, thou burnest all even as Surya in his anger burneth all creatures. O, terrible one, thou resistest even as the fire that destroys everything at the time of the universal dissolution. O, mighty Garuda who movest in the skies, we seek thy protection. O, Lord of birds, thy energy is extraordinary, thy splendor is that of fire, thy brightness is like that of the lightning that no darkness can approach. Thou reachest the very clouds, and art both the cause and the effect, the dispenser of boons and invincible in prowess. O, Lord, this whole universe is rendered hot by thy splendor, bright as the luster of heated gold. Protect these high-souled gods, who overcome by thee and terrified withal, are flying along the heavens in different directions on their celestial cars. O, thou best of birds, thou Lord of all, thou art the son of the merciful and high-souled Rishi Kasyapa, therefore, be not wroth but have mercy on the universe. Thou art supreme. O, pacify thy anger and preserve us. At thy voice, loud as the roar of the thunder, the 10 points, the skies, the heavens, the earth and our hearts, O, bird, thou art continuously shaking. O, diminish this thy body resembling Agni. At the sight of the splendor resembling that of Yama when in wrath, our hearts lose all equanimity and quake. O, thou Lord of birds, be propitious to us who solicit thy mercy. O, illustrious one, bestow on us good fortune and joy. And that bird of fair feathers, thus adored by the deities and diverse sections of rishis, reduced his own energy and splendor. And thus ends the 23rd section in the Astika Parva of the Adi Parva. The Mahābhārata. Adi Parva. Section 24. Astika Parva continued. Sati said, then hearing of and beholding his own body, that bird of beautiful feathers diminished its size. And Garuda said, let no creature be afraid, as ye are in the fright at the sight of my terrible form, I shall diminish my energy. Sati continued, then that bird capable of going everywhere at will, that ranger of the skies capable of calling to his aid any measure of energy, bearing Aruna on his back, wended from his father's home and arrived at his mother's side on the other shore of the great ocean. And he placed Aruna of great splendor in the eastern regions, just at a time when Surya had resolved to burn the worlds with his fierce rays. Saunaka said, when did the revered Surya resolve at the time to burn the worlds? What wrong was done to him by the gods that provoked his ire? Sati said, O, sinless one, when Rāhu was drinking nectar among the gods at the time of the churning of the ocean, he was pointed out to the gods by Surya and Soma, and from that time he conceived an enmity towards those deities. And upon this Rāhu sought to devour his afflictor. Surya became wroth, and thought, Oh, this enmity of Rāhu towards me hath sprung from my desire of benefiting the gods. and this dire consequence I alone have to sustain. Indeed, at this pass help I obtain not. And before the very eyes of the denizens of heaven I am going to be devoured, and they brook it quietly. Therefore, for the destruction of the worlds must I strive. And with this resolution he went to the mountains of the west. And from that place he began to radiate his heat around for the destruction of the world. And then the great rishis, approaching the gods, spake unto them, Lo, in the middle of the night springeth a great heat, striking terror into every heart, and destructive of the three worlds. Then the gods, accompanied by the rishis, wended to the grandsire, and said unto him, O, what is this great heat today that causeth such panic? Surya hath not yet risen, still the destruction of the world is obvious. O Lord, what will happen when he doth rise? The grandsire replied, Indeed, Surya is prepared to rise today for the destruction of the world. As soon as he will appear he will turn everything into a heap of ashes. By me, however, hath the remedy been provided beforehand. The intelligent son of Kasyapa is known to all by the name of Aruna. He is huge of body and of great splendor. He shall stay in front of Surya, doing the duty of his charioteer and taking away all the energy of the former. And this will ensure the welfare of the worlds, of the rishis, and of the dwellers in heaven. Sati continued, Aruna, at the behest of the grandsire, did all that he was ordered to do. And Surya rose veiled by Aruna's person. I have told thee now why Surya was in wrath, and how Aruna, the brother of Garuda, was appointed as his charioteer. Hear next of the other question asked by thee a little while ago. And so ends the 24th section in the Astika Parva of the Adi Parva. The Mahābhārata. Adi Parva. Section 25. Astika Parva continued. Sati said, Then that bird of great strength and energy and capable of going at will to every place repaired to his mother's side on the other shore of the great ocean. Thither lived Vinata in affliction, defeated in wager and put into a state of slavery. Once Kadru, calling Vinata, who had prostrated herself before the former, addressed her these words in the presence of her son, O gentle Vinata, there is in the midst of the ocean, in a remote quarter, a delightful and fair region inhabited by the Nagas. Bear me thither. At this that mother of the bird of fair feathers bore, on her shoulders, the mother of the snakes. And Garuda also, directed by his mother's words, carried, on his back, the snakes. And that ranger of the skies born of Vinata began to ascend towards the sun. And thereupon the snakes, scorched rays of the sun, swooned away. And Kadru, seeing her sons in that state, prayed to Indra, saying, I bow to thee, thou lord of all the gods. I bow to thee, thou slayer of Vritra. I bow to thee, thou slayer of Namachi. O, thou of 1,000 eyes, consort of Sakhi. By thy showers, be thou the protector of the snakes scorched by the sun. O, thou best of the deities, thou art our great protector. O Purandara, thou art able to grant rain in torrents. Thou art Vayu, the air, the clouds, fire, and the lightning of the skies. Thou art the propeller of the clouds, and hast been called the great cloud, i.e., that which will darken the universe at the end of Yuga. Thou art the fierce and incomparable thunder, and the roaring clouds. Thou art the creator of the worlds and their destroyer. Thou art unconquered. Thou art the light of all creatures, Aditya, of Bhāvasu, and the wonderful elements. Thou art the ruler of all the gods. Thou art Vishnu. Thou hast 1,000 eyes. Thou art the God, and the final resource. Thou art, O deity, all-imwriter, and the most adored Soma. Thou art the moment, the lunar day, the Bala, minute, thou art the Kshana, 4 minutes. Thou art the lighted fortnight, and also the dark fortnight. Thou art Kala, thou Kashtha, and thou Truti. 1. Thou art the year, the seasons, the months, the nights, and the days. Thou art the fair earth with her mountains and forests. Thou art also the firmament, resplendent with the sun. Thou art the great ocean with heaving billows and abounding with whales, swallowers of whales, and macaras, and various fishes. Thou art of great renown, always adored by the wise and by the great rishis with minds wrapped in contemplation. Thou drinkest, for the good of all creatures, the soma juice in sacrifices and the clarified butter offered with sacred invocation. Thou art always worshipped at sacrifices by Brahmanas moved by desire of fruit. O, thou of incomparable mass of strength, thou art sung in the Vedas and Vedangas. It is for that reason that learned Brahmanas bent upon performing sacrifices study the Vedas with every care. And so ends the 25th section in the Astika Parva of the Adi Parva.